Welcome to Whistleblowers in partnership with Wix Trade Pro. Coming up.
It's pathetic, and he's decided to be photographed on holiday wearing an Aston Villa shirt with Marcus Rashford's name. It's contemptible, really.
If he was absolutely not for sale, then he would know that by now. The fact they're still sniffing around suggests there is something maybe there that could happen in the next few weeks.
You know, that the abuse that they take from parents because they were failed footballers themselves.
And a crocodile got out the bath. The most ferocious client that Steve Cutner had. Hello and welcome to Whistleblowers. I am Gordon Smart, the YTS Des Lynham, and I'm joined as always by the man in the middle, Mark Clattenburg, and the ferocious pit bull of Fleet Street, Ian Ladyman. And today, standing in for him in the studio, we've got a new reporter for us, the Merseyside reporter from the Mail, from Mail Sport. It's Lewis Steele. Welcome to the podcast, Lewis.
Thank you very much. I was wondering how many people had turned down producer Henry if they got down to me on the list.
I'll be honest with you, mate, you were about 7th on the list. But there were good names ahead of you. We tried to get Don Hutchison on. Yep. He was on there. Who else? Alec McLeish was on there. So Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank was approached.
Wow.
Happy to miss out to them.
Yeah.
So good company for me. Yeah, it's good. Very starstruck to be in a podcast with Ian Ladyman.
I'd be very interested to know what the reasons that Hutchinson, McLeish and Hasselbank gave us for not coming on Whistleblowers, but I hope they were good ones.
Cost.
Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of cost, actually, Lewis, are you being looked after by the Daily Mail for this?
Yeah, I've got a free coffee.
A free coffee, yes.
I got a chocolate croissant when I was waiting, but that's about it, really. Yeah.
Lewis, I'm familiar with your work, right? I like reading your stories about Merseyside mainly in the paper. But what I've seen on social media is quite a lot of abuse. And I think we've got a little bit of a synergy here because quite a lot of grief from Merseyside, right?
Yeah, well, a little bit. I don't know how, but people just started, trawling through tweets that I'd done when I was maybe like 15 years old. And I just woke up one day to a barrage, but I thought, I'm going to delete Twitter for 2 hours.
Yeah.
I was at Munich airport waiting to come back, so I just had a nice little pint on my own.
Yeah.
And then by the time I landed, it had all blown over.
Right, because there's a bit of
pint on your own can solve most things, I find, and I find that if you have 5 pints on your own, it so you can solve even more problems.
That's why Ian Ladyman has no problems, because he drinks on his own. Yeah.
no problems and no friends.
Ian, how are you feeling? By the way, this is my compassionate
I'm fine.
moment.
No, absolutely fine. Come on. Yeah, we don't need to play any tiny violins. I'm absolutely fine. Yeah,
he's just
lovely to see you all.
Granite Northerner, isn't he? And Mark Clattenburg, you good? What's troubling your piece at the moment? Everything all right?
Everything's good.
Good.
Trying to play a bit of golf. Still not very good.
Yeah.
But no, it's nice and nice to see Ian sitting in his little TARDIS. So yeah, waiting for me leaf blower still.
I know it's not arrived. Well, I'm glad you mentioned Wix Trade Pro because in front of us you'll see if anybody's watching on YouTube that the table still hasn't been completed. Ian expertly made a stool last week with a little bit of help from Mr. Clattenburg. But next week's episode you'll see the rest of the stools being assembled, and we might even get Lewis involved in that. Just to make sure we get our value for money. Right, on to football business, because we are about the only football podcast that isn't sitting on a yacht somewhere. Well, I suppose Mark Clattenburg does it 2 days a week, but we're still working. And it's a good time to be doing it, because actually the transfer window, Ian, if we can start with you, it's got off to a bit of a lively start, hasn't it? And Liverpool, and again, Lewis, this is a brilliant time for you to be covering the club, because big names are going to the club, leaving the club, a lot happening.
It's mental. For Liverpool fans, it's like Christmas come early, really. Like last summer, they only signed Federico Chiesa. I mean, sticking on the Christmas thing, that's like a box of milk tray. Whereas this summer, they've got everything they asked for. Well, not everything, but they've got Florian Wirtz. They've got 2 shiny new fullbacks, and then more to come, I think. So it's been busy for me.
Yeah. Well, Ian, to continue that chocolate analogy, right? I mean, these are Benedict's after dinner mints, aren't they? They're really, really good signings. I mean, take us through them, right? Tell us who's coming in.
Yeah, there's a bit of Ferrero Rocher about all of this. So they've signed 2 fullbacks, as Lewis said, Frimpong and Kirkes. I'm particularly excited by Kirkes from Bournemouth. He had a super season last year. One of those players who appeared on the mainstream radar almost from nowhere. I'm sure all the FIFA players and the football geeks out there will claim that they've known about him for 5 years. But for those of us who watch football in a different way, he was new to us. He made incredible progress at Bournemouth, and Liverpool have decided to move before anybody else. I think we know that with Trent Alexander-Arnold already out the building, Andy Robertson's maybe got 1, 2 seasons left in him, maybe. So some future proofing there from Liverpool, and of course they brought Florian Wirtz in from the Bundesliga as well. He is the player that's everybody's excited about. Fabulous creative player. As we stand at the moment, Lewis, how do you think Arne Slot will try and do it?
Is this getting a bit Arsenal-y as well? It's a bit Arteta-esque.
Yeah.
I think what Slot sees, I think what he's told Wirtz is that he sees him as the number 10, and I think Florian Wirtz is the sort of player you can build a whole team around. He's got that, he can score goals, he can create, he's a good runner as well. And I think he is worth the money. It's a lot of money, but I think it's brilliant. I think when Liverpool are dominating, I think they'll basically just say, go out there, free roll, almost similar to Kevin De Bruyne for City over the last decade. And yeah, brilliant signing.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it, Ian? That in the grand scheme of signings in the past 5 years or so, where does this one figure in the box office terms? It feels like the first one that I've been excited about for a long time, thinking, wow, that's a big name and a top player.
Yeah, and we've got to remember that Liverpool have tried to do this in the last 2 or 3 years. And Lewis knows as well as I do, maybe better than I do, that has been this narrative building up around Liverpool that that FSG don't spend money. But I thought that was a little bit false, because they tried to buy Jude Bellingham, they tried to buy Moises Caicedo, they tried to buy Lavia, they tried to spend a lot of money 2 summers ago and couldn't get the players that they were. Essentially, they were, for want of a better phrase, they were prick teased by those 3 players who essentially suggested that they might come, and then all of them walked away. Bellingham went to Madrid, and the other two went to Chelsea. So Liverpool were left a little bit shy at that point. They've got through. They've won a league title, for God's sake. But I think that this spend was always coming. It was always coming. That money didn't go away. That money they were going to spend on those players didn't go away. And now, when the time is right, a year of Arne Slot, they've spent the money. And yeah, they've spent it on a player who looks as though he could make a real impact at Anfield and across the Premier League.
As a quick aside, Mark, are we getting to a point now where players are being transferred that you haven't refereed?
I can't even remember half of these names. It's
really?
Players now, they're so young, because teams want to buy younger players, don't they? So they've got a future sell on. They're looking at an asset as well. And there's players that would have been in their youth teams when I finished refereeing in the Premier League. So it's players that I haven't come across. So I think it's a great signing, and a one that'll certainly enhance them going forward.
And the thing with Liverpool is, when I've watched them, and I did watch them many times last season, the fabulous season, etc., etc. But when, in the moments that they did struggle, and all teams struggle at some point, in the moments that they did struggle, Lewis, I thought they struggled occasionally for a little bit of off-the-cuff creativity, and they still had that move of, if all else fails, give it to Mo, and hope that Mo can just go past a man, inject some adrenaline and some pace into a move. There were other times, if Mo wasn't on his game, the League Cup final against Newcastle would have been a great example. Lots of possession, doing nothing with it, and I think Wirtz, you would imagine, would help with that.
Did that not also fall on Trent Alexander, Lewis?
Yeah, I think they will miss Trent a lot more than people think as well, because just the way that he can just find a pass out of nowhere and open up a defence. So that's why they needed to replace his creativity in a different way. Obviously, it wasn't going to be from right back. But Slot talked to us at the end of the season. He said, I want some new weapons. And Florian Wirtz is as good a weapon as you can buy. Yeah.
I'm interested to know what you boys think about Jurgen Klopp and his appraisal of these signings, because do you think he'll feel slightly aggrieved that he wasn't? I know Ian mentioned that they tried to spend the money, but it definitely looks like the purse strings have been loosened, Lewis.
Yeah, I feel for Klopp a little bit, because obviously he absolutely loves watching what's happened to Liverpool since he's left, but there must be something while he's sat on his sun lounger in Mallorca or wherever he is, thinking, why didn't I just do one more year? Because as soon as he left, City imploded, Arsenal weren't as good as they were the year before, and Liverpool just blitzed the league. And then the summer after he's gone, they're spending 200+ million, could go up to 300 million. He must be thinking, maybe I made the wrong decision.
Lewis, hang on a minute. I'm just looking down a list of big Liverpool transfers here on my phone. Núñez, Van Dijk, Szoboszlai, Alisson, Keita. Correct me if I'm wrong, they were all bought on Jurgen Klopp's watch. Mm-hmm. Yeah? It's not like Jurgen Klopp never had any money to spend.
Yeah, but he sold Coutinho to get in Alisson, Van Dijk, Fabinho, all of them. That's
he's still been backed. But has he been back to the same extent? I see what you're saying, Ian, but is there more of an investment this summer, or is that just timing?
I honestly think it's timing. I think this is I think it's a bit of a false narrative, mate, to be honest. Lewis, you might disagree. Lewis is closer to it than I am.
Well, what I would say, one thing that someone suggested to me was Mo Salah's 32, 33, Van Dijk the same. They're not going to be around forever. Alisson the same. Is it a case of them thinking we need to capitalise on these players and try and make this a dynasty, because in 5 years they'll all be gone, and they'll have to rebuild from the start, so they can just there's that old saying, isn't there? Like you want to fix the roof while the sun's shining, and that's what they're doing here.
Yeah, I like that. I like what they're doing, because many teams the player would leave and then they have to try and fill that gap. Yep. I like the idea that some of these older players are going to you're talking about Andy Robertson.
Yeah.
He's got 1 or 2 years left, but what a great transition to have if an Andy Robertson's still within your squad. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And you also need players and characters still in that dressing room, because these new players are going to need to understand the Liverpool philosophy.
What do you think then? Title favourites, Lewis? Liverpool?
Yeah, they've got to be. I mean, last season was a surprise, really. Everyone thought it was Arsenal or City again. I thought thought Liverpool would be in a bit of a transition, but they absolutely blitzed the league. But now it's different. They go into it as the favourites. There's question marks over the other two contenders, whereas everyone knows Liverpool, what they're about. So how do they handle that pressure going in as favourites? We'll have to see.
Right, let's get a couple of questions from Twitter, and thank you very much for sending them all in, by the way. Let's have a rapid fire of the best ones. This is from LFC Chris. Are there any talks for a new Slot contract, Lewis?
Yes, I think that is ongoing at the moment, actually.
Already?
Yeah. I think basically if you look back to when Klopp's first season, they were already talking about doing his contract by about the January, February. We asked Slot about this a few months ago, and he didn't deny it, which means, I asked Slot's camp about it, and they didn't deny it either. So I think that means,
they play with a straight bat on those questions.
It's not like he wouldn't say no, that's not happening, but I think realistically it's definitely happening behind the scenes, and rightfully so. Right,
here's Henry Williams. Will Liverpool, and you can come on this in a second, Mark, will Liverpool sign Isak?
Is it likely? I don't think so, but is it possible? I think yes, there's every possibility that Liverpool do go for him. It's definitely not impossible. Newcastle are talking money, and when clubs are talking money, that
give us a percentage of likeliness.
Well, all the Liverpool fan accounts will clip this up, won't they? But I'd say it's probably only about 30%.
So. Yeah, we'll clip it up. I mean, here's the thing, right? Every top club has to be admiring Isak. Ian, it's as simple as that. He's scoring goals for fun. Brilliant player. He'd fit in any side, wouldn't he?
We live in a world where number 9s are as scarce as hen's teeth. I mean,
how mental is that, by the way, Ian?
World class. Well, they don't. Well, from an English point of view, they don't breed them in academies. They do. It's not the emphasis in academy football to produce that type of player. Now, three of us of a certain age can sit here and lament that all day long if we want to, but it's just a fact that proper number 9s are absolutely scarce, which is why a club like Chelsea have had to take a gamble on someone like Liam Delap, who is unproven at this point. So Isak is not unproven. I was at Anfield. He made his debut for Newcastle at Anfield about 2 or 3 seasons ago, and it was obvious that day he had something. He had absolute star quality. And if Liverpool could get that one done, I hear what Lewis says about it being less likely than likely. If they get that one done, then blimey, I think they're evens favourites for the title if they get that one done.
Right, Mark Clattenburg, right?
Odds-ons.
You're a man who loves a pound note more than anybody I've ever met, right? So, is there a price on his head that makes it worthwhile business for Newcastle?
I think there's always a price. I don't think any time I heard a club say a player's not for sale, it's absolute rubbish, because every player has a value. And actually, Newcastle was a quoting around 200 million that could make an offer. And I think that's Newcastle probably saying to everybody, look, you can't afford him, therefore we're saying 200 million. The problem Newcastle have got is the contract of Isak. The future. Is Isak behind the scenes saying, I'm not going to sign another contract, which is opening the door for Newcastle to try and negotiate the way out of, because at the moment Isak's got great value if he sees his contract out.
What is his contract, by the way? Do we know how much he's got left on it?
I think there's a 2 years left, but Newcastle want him along.
It's a Trent Alexander-Arnold situation, isn't it?
Yeah. But the problem you've got at Newcastle is if they sell Isak, the fans will go, crazy. You know, they're looking to move forward as a club. They're looking to challenge the Liverpools, the Man Cities, and break into that on a regular basis. They don't want to dip in to the top four, which they did 2 seasons ago, and then drop back out and then come back again. Yeah. They want to be consistent. The only way you're consistent is get the best players in. And as we all know, signing top players across Europe to come to Newcastle is slim, because the players don't want to come up to Newcastle because they all want to go into London. They all want to sign for London-based clubs. So it makes it more difficult. And now with the financial fair play, it's even making it even more difficult, because even if you're paying increased transfer fees, increased wages to get them to the Northeast, it creates a problem going forward. So selling Isak for me is slim but none going forward, and especially when we're in the Champions League next season.
We try and do this with Ian sometimes, but I'm keen to get your view on this, Lewis. If you do the arithmetic and the maths around a £200 million price tag for a club like Liverpool, should they be willing to pay it, would that be justifiable with the economics of football now if he brought a return in terms of goals at the highest level in the Champions League, for instance? Is it worth £200 million now? Is that where we're at with transfer fees?
Maybe not quite 200 million, but I think maybe 150 million. If you look at when they went out of the Champions League to PSG, they only went out on penalties. If they put a couple more of their chances away, or one more of the chances away, they would have gone through to the quarters, and then who knows, maybe gone all the way. Yeah. If Isak was playing for Liverpool that night, then there's every chance they would have done that. Yeah. I think Newcastle are scared, because if they're talking money, they must fear that Liverpool are coming in, because Richard Hughes, Liverpool sporting director, is very good friends with Eddie Howe. Yeah. If he was absolutely not for sale, then he would know that by now. The fact they're still sniffing around suggests there is something maybe there that could happen in the next few weeks. And yeah, I just think if I was selling my bike, as soon as I started, if I started quoting 200 quid to someone, that means I'm obviously open to selling it at some price. I don't even have a bike, so I don't know what I'm saying.
Ian, very briefly, do you think we're in a territory now where you could justify a fee like £150 million for a player like Isak?
Yeah, we are, because anything's justifiable in football as long as you can actually afford it. And if Liverpool can afford it within their PSR ceiling, their financial fair play ceiling, then it's justifiable. Yeah. One thing I would say is that I do wonder how close, because Liverpool will have one tactic up their sleeve that they haven't used yet, if they really, really, really are desperate for Isak, which is to get in Isak's ear and tell him to start agitating. That's probably the one tactic they've got left. If they think that just 150 million quid on the table won't do it, they can get in Isak's ear. It's illegal, but everybody does it. Get in Isak's ear, tell him to start agitating, and then it gets very difficult for Newcastle indeed.
One more answer from all three of you. Ian Ladyman, yes or no, will he be at Newcastle next season?
Yeah, he's got 3 years left on his contract, by the way. Yeah, I think he will.
Lewis?
Yes.
100% yes.
Only one of you answered that with one word. Lewis, you're welcome back on this podcast anytime. Staying in the Northwest, right, it is important to talk about this story because Alejandro Garnacho is in the headlines for what you could describe as an act of petulance, right? And we've seen this a few times over the years, but Ian, again, in the context of transfer stories and players making a statement, this is quite a mischievous one, isn't it? So tell us what's happened with the Aston Villa strip.
It's pathetic. It's pathetic. So this is the way in the old days. If players want to go, they had to go to a manager, walk into his office, sit down, and say, "I want to go." And if you don't let me go, I'm not going to play. I'm not going to come on pre-season tour. Yeah. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. These days, of course, there are many more. At least that was up front. At least there was a kind of honesty about that. These days, players are much more snide, or they can be if they want to be. And this is a snide act from Garnacho. He's on holiday. I mean, his relationship with Ruben Amorim at Manchester United is not great. That's an understatement. And he's decided to be photographed on holiday wearing an Aston Villa shirt with Marcus Rashford's name across the back. We know that Rashford, of course, is the other persona non grata when it comes to Ruben Amorim's Manchester United. So this is Garnacho's way of saying, I stand with Marcus. Get me out of this football club. It's contemptible, really. Let
me play devil's advocate, though. Is he just a naive, innocent wee guy who was trying to show a little bit of support to his pal Marcus Rashford?
Yeah, yes, mate. I would say there's probably in the balance of probabilities, he'd probably give that one about 5%, weighted against the 95% of where I'm coming from. Yes, he is young, but he's not stupid. And if he's young enough and stupid enough to do that, then the people around him who are advising him certainly shouldn't be young enough and stupid enough to do that. It's ridiculous because what it also does, it not only sends a firm message to Man United, but United have got that message anyway. They got it ages ago.
That's an important
What
point.
it also does, it sends a message to the rest of the football world, anyone out there who might want to buy him. And the message is basically, don't bother. I'm a juvenile. I'm a nuisance. I'm a pain in the backside. Don't touch me.
I love that. The first time in the podcast today that Ian Ladyman's pointy right fingers come out. I love that moment. Lewis, there is a really interesting point as well that Ian's made there, I think, about the people around Garnacho, right? Because there have to be people who pass that social media post, and it does tell you that they're kind of colluding, aren't they, to make some kind of statement there.
Yeah, I think the whole thing stinks, to be fair, around Garnacho in general. There's always been stories about, is it his brothers like leaking the teams and stuff? I'm not sure if that's true, but I just think that he's just a disgrace, really. I remember I was at a game at Goodison, I think it was the season before the one just gone, where he scored that brilliant overhead kick and he peeled off and did a Ronaldo Siu celebration. And it's just, I think he thinks he's Ronaldo, basically. He thinks he's a lot better than he is. I mean, there's a very talented player in there, but he's not as good as he thinks. He's just played for a team who finished, 15th, 16th.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have the right to be, strutting around thinking he's the best player in the world.
I am sorry to commit the ultimate football cliche now and say, imagine that happened in the Alex Ferguson era.
You would have been gone.
I mean, it's a fundamental principle, Mark, isn't it, of football, that you don't wear on another team's strip, right?
Yeah,
don't do it.
But this, like you say, both of them have said it stinks. Of course it does. But this is just another example how young footballers now are just trying to manufacture another move.
Yeah.
But it never looks right. If I'm, now so much goes into signing a player, the due diligence around, does he fit in the dressing room? What's he like off the field? Not just about what he's like on the field now.
Yeah.
And if you see Garnacho and his antics, what he's doing off the field, would you really want to touch him?
Yeah.
Somebody will, of course they will, if the price is right. Yeah. Or they'll take him on loan and maybe in Europe and see how he does the following year. But, as a young footballer, he's got to possibly go back into the dressing room pre-season.
Yeah.
I'm sure his fellow professionals will not be liking what they've seen.
Does it point again, Lewis, to the toxic nature of the Old Trafford dressing room? That kind of behaviour.
Yeah, it does. Like the whole club is just riddled with toxicity at the moment. It has been for 10 years, and I think they're making good business this summer. Like Cunha's a very good player, although there's attitude problems with him as well. So you never know what'll happen 6 months down the line, whether he's kicking up a fuss about something. Mbuemo, if they get him, brilliant signing. But the whole thing is just a mess, and Amorim needs to sort it out because he's got the backing of the fans now. But if they're still as bad as they were last season, that will wear off very quickly.
Yeah. Ian, you mentioned an interesting point to me about the role of Amorim here, right? It's your role as a manager to handle difficult people in the dressing room or challenging people in the dressing room. Same as a newsroom at a newspaper. You're always going to have one wild character, right? Wild card. Is this a test of Amorim? Is it shown that he might not be the most adept or equipped to handle firebrand characters?
Yeah, I certainly think there's a question there. So when he exiled Marcus Rashford, and obviously Amorim wasn't the first Manchester United manager to become irritated quite quickly by Marcus Rashford. Erik ten Hag wasn't having him either. But so when he exiled Rashford, my view was fair play, strong management, good decision. Doesn't matter what people might be saying in the media, on social media. You've seen it firsthand. You've given him his chance. He hasn't taken it. Off he goes. But now it's happening again, and it's happening with. And this is a Manchester United squad that is not exactly brimming over with exceptional talent. Okay, there's a lot of very ordinary footballers at Old Trafford, as we know. Garnacho was one of the better ones in terms of his ability. Lewis has already alluded to it. So when I noticed at the end of last season, or towards the end of last season, the way that the wind was blowing with Garnacho as well, I did start to wonder, blimey, can he afford to do this again? Mm-hmm. Can Amorim afford to drive another talented, young United player? Okay, Rashford's not a young player anymore, I suppose, but you know what I mean. Can he afford to drive another talented, young, attacking player out of the building? And how long before people like me and other people start to say, well, hang on a minute, as you say, Gordon, it's your job. It's written on the door of your office. It says first team manager. It's your job to manage these players. So there becomes a point where at least it's worth debating whether it's on the players or whether it's on the coach. At the moment, I absolutely give the benefit of the doubt to Ruben Amorim. Absolutely would stand in his corner at the moment. But I think it's a conversation worth having.
Quick aside, Mark Clattenburg, how many of these managers did you referee, by the way? Did you do Amorim?
No.
Slot?
No.
Guardiola?
No.
Ah, well, why are you here then? Fucking hell.
Exactly.
Can we get Howard Webb on the phone?
Yeah. I did have his shirt once.
Lewis, right, there's an important question here about agents for you, right? You speak to the players loads. Do you think Garnacho was the person who instigated this whole idea with Aston Villa strip, or do you think it's the agent in his ear? Which way round?
Another cliche, probably a bit of both, to be fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you reckon, Ian? Agent instigated, or is it Garnacho himself?
Oh, 100% Garnacho. I cannot believe no self-respecting agent in the world would dream up this idea.
Yeah, I think we should talk a little bit about agents. And actually, Mark, it's good to get a little bit of colour from you, because it's interesting to see how agents get into that inner circle with the money men, right? With the owners, the people that have the checkbooks. Have you witnessed that? Have you seen that when you were on the books at Nottingham Forest?
Yeah, I saw it firsthand. You know, like, it's interesting. Some agents, like the superpower agents, the big agents, like Mendes, for example, when he was at Wolves, he started to work his magic at Nottingham Forest, bring in the coach, bring in the certain players, and that got quickly moved aside, and it was Kia, Jarabchin. And I witnessed firsthand, went for dinner, and you could see that he was starting to work his magic regarding personnel, but not just in his footballing empires, also his other sporting empires, his horse racing. So there's a lot of other factors, but certainly they're pushing what they want. They've got a book of players, they've got a book of coaches. They want certain people to be in football clubs. And when the club's successful, like Wolves was under Mendes for a while, you know, it's always the flavour of the month. But when things go wrong, they're quickly moved aside and somebody else comes in. And now Nottingham Forest had a great season last season. You know, these agents are always going to be surrounding the owners because, yes, you've got your sporting directors, but with Nottingham Forest slightly different to Liverpool, he's very hands-on, Mr. Marinakis. So they have to go to the top man, not the sporting directors, not the managers. These are dealing with the high-end people.
Ian, you've had a front row seat for this, right, over your career in football. Would you say that agents are now the most powerful people in football?
No, I wouldn't. I'd probably say the players are the most powerful people in football.
Really?
These days. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because without them, we don't have a game. I know that's a very obvious thing to say. And I think that the power they have in terms of what they earn gives them a certain amount of agency now in terms of what they do, when they play, how they play. They're given greater leeway in terms of the way they behave.
They can get rid of the agents as well, can't they?
I think, it's easy to sit on a podcast like this or to talk with your mates in the pub or to write in a newspaper on a website and just denigrate football agents, right? Very easy to do that. I was talking to somebody yesterday, actually, who was very close to one football club, was saying that essentially agents, you can probably split into 80-20. So 80 of them know exactly what they're doing and do it very well. And 20% of them, you wouldn't trust as far as you could throw them. It's not a bad ratio. And I think that Mark touched on Wolves there. I had Wolves written down on my notepad here as well. George Mendes essentially assembled the modern Wolves in terms of the way it works, playing roster, etc. They got promoted in 2018 to the Premier League, and they're still there. They're still there, right? You ask any Wolves fan, despite the fact that you look at their team and you might say, okay, don't recognise many names there from the Black Country, for example, not many local lads in that team. That are taking it. That are taking it 10 years ago. They're established Premier League club. George Mendes has helped them do that. Nottingham Forest have established themselves in the Premier League. Keir Jarabchin is helping them do that. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with an agent being asked by a football club to help them construct a club and go where they want to be. The danger comes, as we know, when an agent starts to ask to operate more in his own interests than he does the interests of the football club. That's the line that you have to be very careful that you walk.
Lewis, there's an interesting thing here as a younger member of the sporting media about the different type of agent you have now. If you look at somebody like Declan Rice, for instance, you might have a media and commercial agent as well as a football agent. So there are quite a few different people in the pot here. Is that a common thing amongst players now to see that behind the scenes.
Yeah, there's loads of different sorts of agents, and my experience with them is they either reply to you within genuinely 10 seconds, or they just flat out ignore you. Mm-hmm. And that's normally because everything that they do is driven by their agendas. You know, if an agent comes on with a story that you've not even asked for, you have to smell a rat, because they're obviously trying to push their client to a club or try and put pressure to get a contract. But they all work in different ways. Some of them very, very sound. Some of them will give you a one-word reply, won't pick up the phone. So that's just how it works, I think.
A good agent is absolutely worth a weight in gold to a player. A good agent, he's not only good at what he does, but actually cares about you and doesn't just care about his cuts, cares about you and your career. They are worth the weight in gold. And there are many of those around, just as there are plenty who, as Lewis would say, would pick up the phone to a journalist and just tell him a barefaced lie in a desperate bid to advance their client's cause in the public domain. The key for football clubs is to use the right ones. And by the way, before we talk about, we get deep into this, that, the power lies with with the agents and the players. Football clubs can always say no, okay? Yeah. Daniel Levy has been saying no for 20 years. In terms, Manchester United got to a point where the negotiations to get Michael Carrick and Berbatov, which was particularly painful, out of Tottenham, led Manchester United, the old Manchester United, to say, we will never deal with Tottenham again. We will never deal with Daniel Levy. It's too painful. Alex Ferguson wanted Luka Modric for years. Okay, he saw Luka Modric as the answer to his midfield creative problem for quite some time. Never went anywhere near it when he was at Tottenham, because him and David Gilder saw it's not worth it. Levy will not only say no over this, he'll take us to 1 minute to midnight on August the 31st of the transfer window before finally saying no, and we're not doing it. So go back to Newcastle thing. Newcastle can just say no if they want over Isak. Just say no. Yeah,
but there's been no offer. Once the offer's been placed.
Yeah, different game.
Of course.
Mark, what's your take then? Who do you think holds the most power in a modern transfer then? Is it the player, is it the club, or is it the agent?
But everything, isn't it, really? Right. I think if the club's powerful and strong, then the agent becomes weak. If a club's weak and it's all about the positioning, there are some clubs can be desperate to stay in the Premier League, so they make some panic buys in January, which means the agent becomes very, very powerful. Yeah. Because because he holds the trump card. If they want a goalkeeper, for example, I remember Nottingham Forest needed a goalkeeper, and they went through 3 or 4 goalkeepers to get the end one, which Sells, which was a great sign. Sells was a great sign in the end, but they've gone through a lot of agents. Agents know that they're in for a goalkeeper. Mm-hmm. The price goes up, or the players' wages goes up because they're in a weak position. But if you've got a strength, then the agents have got less and less power.
Yeah. Again, it's interesting what you said, Ian, about agents aren't all bad people, right? There are some good ones out there, and I think I had a few experiences with some really good agents. A guy called Steve Kuttner used to work in the music business, and he ended up looking after Frank Lampard, I think it was. But in music, he managed and still does manage.
Mark Bosnich back in the day.
Yeah. Even
couldn't have Mark Bosnich back there, but Frank Lampard famously.
Even now, still manages Richard Ashcroft. And Richard Ashcroft tells a great story, by the way, because he went round to Steve Kuttner's house and he kept exotic pets, snow leopards, that kind of stuff. And Richard Ashcroft visited the bathroom in the house, and a crocodile got out the bath, and the crocodile was called Walter Smith because it was the most ferocious client that Steve Kuttner had. Walter Smith, the crocodile, the late great Walter Smith.
Richard Ashcroft, by the way, for those who don't know, he is former lead singer of Verve. The second most famous person to attend Winstanley Sixth Form College
in Wigan after Ian Ladyman.
After Ian Ladyman,
there you go.
A little bit younger than me. We were not there at the same time.
I went to see him the other night. He was looking his age, unlike Ian Ladyman.
Oh, so kind.
He's the Benjamin.
It's amazing what a Zoom camera can do for you.
And the lighting.
He's got a fancy light on today, I think. Just to finish on the agents, Lewis, have you ever seen evidence of a journalist being firmly in the control of an agent?
Yeah, there's all sorts of things. I think I heard a story once about someone who basically faked that he was an agent, and basically made a fake email. Can't remember what the email was. Can't remember who he was pretending to be. But it was when Mario Balotelli was at Liverpool, and he got in touch with this journalist and said, "Listen, I need some help getting this story out there. Mario wants to move to Shanghai, I think it was, in China. but he needs 2 hours a week guaranteed with the pandas at Shanghai Zoo. So the story goes out there. It's obviously just some guy made it up. It's just brilliant. I mean, if I'm bored one day, I might pretend to be an agent and see what I can get into the media.
But then with Balotelli, that's every chance that was true.
There's every chance that was true. I thought you were going to say if I'm bored one day, I might pretend to be a panda to hang about with Balotelli.
He got a better deal than me in China then. Sorry, he got a better deal than me in China because I only got 1 hour with a panda in Beijing Zoo.
Blimey, I feel sorry for that panda already.
Yeah.
Gordon, I will say though that it is not uncommon at all for agents to use journalists, and some journalists will be, and I may occasionally fall into this category myself, are willing to be used if they think they'll get something back further down the line. Okay, but the agents are only doing what managers used to do. That's a very, very quick story. When I was on the Nottingham Evening Post many years ago covering Nottingham Forest, and Dave Bassett, bless him, was the manager of Forest, and that was the day when I used to speak to Bassett every single day on the phone. And he rang me one day and he said, and I won't do the accent, he said, "Right, son, I've got a story for you." He said, "We're trying to sign Earl Barrett from Everton." Remember the former fullback, yeah. Earl Barrett. Trying to find sign Earl Barrett from Everton. I said, that would be a great signing. He said, "Yeah." He said, "Look, it's not true." He said, "We're not trying to sign him." I said, "Oh, right." He said, "But I want you to write it, need you to write it, because I'm trying to smoke out, I'm trying to buy another fullback on the quiet. Don't worry. While everybody's fussing about Earl Barrett, I'll sign this other fullback and I'll give you the wink on that one so that you'll have that as exclusive." I said, "Fine." I said, "Right, Harry." I said, I will agree to this, but under one condition." I said, "This will be on the back page of our paper this evening. Okay, it will be picked up by all local radio stations. It will be on the local TV news. So when you are asked about it at your press conference tomorrow, you have to say it's true." "Of course I will, son. Of course I will, son. Of course I will." "You have to say it's true. This is our splash this afternoon. It's our exclusive. Okay, you got to stand it up." "Yeah, of course I will. Of course I will. Of course I will." You know it's coming, don't you? So we rerun the story. Forest in for Barrett, £2 million bid for Everton fullback. Blah blah blah. Ian Ladyman exclusive. Next day, Dave Bassett's pre-match press conference for weekend game. First question by local radio: "Harry, we're here in for Earl Barrett at Everton. Any truth in that one?" "I haven't got a clue where that one comes from, son. It's a load of bollocks." I'm sitting at the back of the room thinking, "Thanks, Harry. Thanks for that. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much."
I rang him later and I said, "What was all that about?" He said, "Shit." He said, "Son, I forgot all about it." He said, I'd forgotten I'd given you that story." So there you go. You know what I mean?
That was Dave Harry Bassett, right?
Yeah. And I was with him at a dinner recently and I reminded him about it and he was killing himself.
How's he doing, by the way? How's his health? Is he all right?
He's all right. He's okay, is Harry. Yeah, he's okay. He's had some challenges. But he's battling on. And I was next to him at the LMA dinner a couple of 2-3 weeks ago, and he was on good form, and I reminded him of that story. He didn't remember, but he was absolutely killing himself laughing. He thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard.
We wish him well. He's a good man. Did a bit of work with him recently, actually. I don't know if you remember, ITV Tonight did a report, and they wired up Sam Allardyce and Harry Bassett to check their hearts. Remember. And I went back and did the follow-up with them. Now they're a bit older, and talked about what damage had been done to their bodies with stress. And
they both had stents in, those two.
They both had stents, and they were just talking about the damage being a manager had done to them through stress. It was fascinating, and Harry really thinks it had affected his life.
Incredible.
Didn't Allardyce get something diagnosed on the back of that original programme?
Yeah. It was when he was
because he found his blood pressure was going dangerously high during the game, didn't they?
Yeah, it was rocketing right
something
up.
Like that.
He had to get some treatment off it. But yeah, we wish Harry Bassett well. It's just one little thing on agents as well. Probably the worst example I had of loads of agents getting involved in a story would have been probably about 2010, I think it was. And I got a great tip off that P. Diddy was going to buy Crystal Palace. I mean, for the headline alone, Crystal Palace, it was absolute gold dust. But you should have seen the people trying to get involved in that to make some money. It was this, agents popping up everywhere trying to be part of this deal to buy Crystal Palace. But they looked at the books, and fair play to Steve Parish for sorting all of that out eventually. But one stand was owned by Sainsbury's, other part was owned by the council. And I think P. Diddy had looked at it and thought, right, I might be a businessman, but fuck that.
Yeah. I might be a businessman, but I'm not a stupid businessman.
But yeah, a lot of agents crawling around that one. Right, we're going to move on now. Lewis, we need your help because last week we started a very important hunt through the joy of Panini stickers. But for this one, what we're really looking to do is try and discover Gianni Infantino's presence in a packet of stickers, right? Because he has placed himself the name of the sticker, I think it's the emblem, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He calls himself the emblem. So, Lewis, would you like to open our latest pack of Panini stickers to see if Infantini...
See, Lewis, we thought he was going to be in every packet, but last week he wasn't there. He wasn't there.
I like Lewis.
But we think he'll be like one of the gold cards.
Yeah. A bit of ASMR here.
Oh. It's like the Willy Wonka golden ticket.
Yeah.
A player that I've never heard of, Nelson Diossa.
He's got a good agent, by the way.
Marcelo Allende. Yeah, the agents will see this podcast and be on to me. Warren Emery from PSG.
I thought you were going to say Walter Zenga there.
Benjamin Kramashi, never heard of him. And Rami Bensebaini from Dortmund, but no Infantino.
Yeah,
how much does that packet cost? Anybody know?
It's cost you £4 at your expenses.
But seriously, as if you're a kid and you've bought that. You open that, you're going to be devoured, aren't you?
Why?
You know what I mean?
Why? We haven't had any copies yet, so...
Because you're looking for you're looking for Messi or Harry Kane or something. Not looking for those.
There's not a foil one yet either, have we?
They're looking for Nelson.
They're the elite
Diossa.
ones. You're not going to get them straight away.
We've not had these kids crying in supermarkets around the country with that. The hunt for Gianni Infantino continues, but we were laughing last week because he's called his sticker the emblem. Gianni Infantino, the emblem. So we asked AI for appropriate names for the members of this podcast. So, Lewis, Mark Clattenburg, AI came back with the Spotlight Seeker. Does that feel appropriate?
Really? No, I think that's Henry's made that up.
No,
that isn't AI, because I did it myself this morning. It didn't come out of that.
That was AI. That was Ian Ladyman, the back page bard. Is that his nickname in the male sports department?
It will be now, yeah.
To be fair, there were people in our department who think I barred myself from the back page a long time ago. I could do with being on it a bit more often. To be fair,
you remember what the back page is, Ian? Right, and for me, it was the name dropper general.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's not bad.
You know,
that's good.
I always say that to people. It was kind of my job.
You do drop a good name, to be fair.
I mean, you have to do it in the gig.
Yeah, and they're good names. They're good names.
They're decent names. Walter Smith, the crocodile, doesn't get better than that. Don't forget, you can email us, whistleblowers@dailymail.com. You can head to our social accounts on X. It's Blowers Pod. On TikTok, Whistleblowers Podcast. Instagram, Whistleblowers Pod. And if you can better AI with any of those nicknames for our stickers, then please do. Remember, the Spotlight Seeker for Clattenburg, the Backpage Bard for Ladyman, and for me, the Name Dropper General. Any suggestions for Lewis?
Ian, what about the Backpage Boar? That's better. For me, not him. Yeah. For me, not him. He's the Ginger Pearl, isn't he? He's the Ginger Pearl.
The Ginger Pearl.
He's a Ginger Pearl.
I'll be going straight to HR after this podcast.
Or the Ginger Twirl. Anyone who's read any of his stories?
I might go for Secret City fan. How about that? I didn't say which city.
I'm not a Coventry City fan. No.
There we go.
That's just a rumour.
Right, we've got to finish on something quite serious, actually, but I think it's got an interesting development in football, and it is from the Club World Cup. Remember, the trophy does have Infantino's name on twice, but ref cam footage, Mark Clattenburg. Not all of the referees, but a selection of referees have been cammed up. What do you think?
I've wore them in charity matches, and I think they give a great insight to what actually the referee sees, because everybody criticises referees and say, you haven't give that for whatever reason, you support this club or whatever. And we saw, was it last week, the sending off of, was it Lewis of Man City?
Rico
Lewis's challenge. And actually the video footage from the referee was incredible, that you could see that the challenge was high, so there can be no complaints. But what it does is, and there'll be an interesting debate when they look at the statistics going forward, is the less dissent from the players known that they're on camera? Because before, players used to give me dissent, and fans around the world used to say, well, why are you not punishing that player? And a lot of the times is you're just not looking in that direction, or you don't know what he said. And some of it, they'll say it's in industrial language. But with it being on the cam, I think players are going to be less likely to show dissent, because A, it tarnishes their reputation, or B, it risks them for maybe suspensions later on. So I think it's a great move forward, but it will take time to look at and analyse the data. Is dissent, yellow cards for dissent, being reduced because of this deterrence?
Lewis, yes or no? Would you be for it?
Yeah, I think all the transparency we can get, we should, I think. I think as well it would make people realise just how quick everything happens on a football pitch, because they did a player cammed up last season with Yuri Tillemans, and it was just like, wow, the split second they had to make those decisions, and it would be the same for the ref. You just see, wow, that's actually what actually happens. Maybe I'll lay off him a bit, because it's easy watching on the TV. You get 20 replays of whatever.
But it was interesting listening to Collina, Pierluigi Collina, who's the head of refereeing of FIFA, talking about the cameras that the referees are wearing. He didn't say about any of this. They were talking more for the entertainment, for the football fan watching on the TV and giving a different insight. They didn't. But what we've got to look at is what happens at the top level in football goes all the way down to the grassroots. And we know that there's issues in the grassroots, not just in England, across the world. Mm-hmm. So therefore, if it helps the grassroots level referees, which is where referees start off, it can certainly help if it's shown at the top level and it works.
My son's 15, and that would really change the atmosphere of the games if the parents were on camera. You know,
I remember doing a game quickly, and it was a friend's under 13s game in the northeast of England, and it was a top of the table clash. My friend said, "Look, I want you to referee it," and I'd just refereed West Ham on the Saturday, and this was a Sunday afternoon, and I was just running around doing minding my own business. It's a children's game, so the children are in awe of me refereeing their game, and this parent, just the volley of abuse I took over a decision was incredible, and foul language, and in the end I just stopped the game. And because I had the experience, I just walked over to the parent, got me whistle, and just dropped it in front of him and said, "Look, I'm off." And all the parents realised that they were going to lose me as a referee, decided he left and he had to be escorted away, only because I had the power and the experience to drop. These young referees haven't. That the abuse that they take from parents, who a lot of it is because they were failed footballers themselves and they want their sons to be professional footballers. And they get frustrated about it, but some of the levels of abuse is incredible.
I tell you, when I would have loved you to have a camera on you was when you got a bollocking from Collina in the canteen.
Oh, when everybody had the full fat. So basically it was the Euros, just at that story. So there was when the Euro 2016, and for the whole tournament, you serve rabbit food, lettuce, all the healthy stuff. And when you're feeling really down because you've eaten the same stuff, you're wearing the same clothes every day, and you just needed a pick-me-up moment where the dietitian and the fitness guys had actually heard from the clubs that they were having barbecues on the odd day just to get the players a bit more motivated. So this, dietitian said, "Oh, let's have some burgers on the menu," and Collina mustn't have known about it. So we're all in the canteen, and Pierluigi Collina stood up when he saw the burgers and just let rip, and everybody thought it was just a joke at first, and then realised that it wasn't joking, and you should have seen the lads pushing the plates underneath the table and had the burgers.
How many burgers had you had at that point?
Two.
Two double burgers.
When you're at a tournament then, Mark, when you're at a tournament like that, that's interesting to me. So just explain that environment. So where would you be living then at that? That was in France, that tournament. Were you all kind of living together then?
So we're in a hotel,
I didn't know that was the way it worked.
Yeah, so all the referees meet. We were in a hotel, maybe 30 minutes drive outside of Paris. Closer to the airport, because logistically that makes it work. But we're all together. You train every day together. You eat together. You wear they tell you what clothes to wear, which colour t-shirt to wear for training, which polo shirt to wear during the afternoons. There's your PlayStations, your pool tables, just to keep you occupied during the day and in the evening. But a lot of downtime. But a lot of it's not. People think tournaments are great because it's what you see on the TV. But a lot of it's mentally, it's tough, because doing the same thing for a month, and you just want some sort of different environment. Like there's no alcohol, for example, and sometimes you want to have a beer, and you feel like you don't want to have a beer because it could affect you getting a future match as well. So you're trying to manage situations.
You're not allowed. It's really interesting. So would you not even be allowed, for example, just to go out with your refereeing team, the four of you, the five of you, just to go out for dinner in the evening then on your own? Can you just not do that?
You try to, but for example, you're getting followed by journalists. We went to the pre-camp for the Euro, and I was followed by journalists because the Premier League had a round of fixtures, and it was me, Martin Atkinson, were taken away from the environment, and Premier League weren't having particularly the referees weren't having a particularly good time and there was some controversial decisions, and the journalists were trying to get a story that we were out drinking and eating while the Premier League was on, but actually we're at a camp and it was our last night. We're going home the next day, but it's how, for example, I didn't want to go out, especially in the Euro, even just to have a beer, because if somebody takes a picture of me having a beer, they can produce it 3 days later and say Mark Clattenburg was having a beer a night before a game. And sometimes it's just not worth the hassle because...
Would it be a dry hotel then?
Well, it wasn't dry, but I think referees were so professional in that. Going back when I first started, it wasn't as professional as it started to develop. And in 2016, it was so professional that the referees wanted, the fitness, the diet, everything started to move forward, where in the past referees didn't really care what they ate or drank. But because of more social media and more cameras on mobile phones, referees had to be so careful, because I wanted to referee the final and I didn't want a negative impact of me saying I was drunk during the tournament, because it's not a good image, certainly for Pierluigi Collina.
Could I argue though, right, that isn't that why journalism is important? Because if there weren't journalists keeping an eye on you, you'd have been out of the piss.
Yeah, actually, lucky enough that I actually missed that. I'd actually had 3 pints instead of 2.
Yeah, so it is interesting that though. But again, I'm with you on that, Ian. The idea of you being together with a bunch of other referees. Who were you? I thought you said it was quite a lonely job, but were you mates with any other refs?
No, we're not mates, because everybody's competition.
Right.
Everybody wants that end goal, which was the final of the Euro, for example.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're together. You're always wishing everybody well. I always wanted everybody to do well, because you know what? It's a positive impact that, if the tournament starts well and refereeing's in a positive way, then, you as a group can enhance. And everybody wants that final, of course. And when I was chosen, you'll have negative people behind saying, he's just refereed the Champions League final. I should be better than him. He's made that mistake. But I never had that philosophy, because I just wanted everybody to do well. And if they did well, then it helped, certainly when I was refereeing as well. But, did I have good friends? Yeah, you keep in touch with friends. I remember being good friends with Jonas Eriksson. He was Swedish. He was like same mentality as me. He liked a beer, he liked to laugh. And we we'd always room together when we had...
the Corona.
Yeah, always. But you know what? It's like people used to say, go and stay with the English guys. No, it was nice to go and work with some of the foreigners. And I was always good mates with Jonas. And you know what? You build up friendships, but in the end, refereeing was ruthless, because everybody wanted that game.
Mark, I've got to ask you about, had you had a camera during your career, what's the most memorable confrontation it could have captured?
Probably that time when I refereed Man United, Liverpool. And it's always a fierce... For me, it doesn't matter what anybody says. As a referee, what I've experienced, it was the most ferocious, most difficult game to referee. Mm-hmm. I've refereed the derbies, and most of the derbies, the players know each other. So that the tunnel is quite friendly. And this was never friendly. I remember Wayne Rooney and Steven Gerrard being in the dressing room with the team sheets, and there were England internationals playing together for England, didn't speak. They didn't speak one word, didn't speak in the tunnel, didn't speak on the pitch. There was just no love lost. Mm-hmm. However, so this type of game was always difficult, and especially at Old Trafford. Mm-hmm. And I remember giving 3 penalties to Liverpool, which was never heard of. Giving 1 penalty at Old Trafford was always, difficult. But to give 3 penalties was just, I don't think it's ever happened before, and never happened again since. And they're all penalties. I think the third one was a bit dicey looking back at the replays, but certainly the 2 were nailed on. They could have had a 4th as well. So, and I remember Steven Gerrard coming up to us at the end of the game, and he said, Mark, you've had a great game today. And I went, yeah, probably because you've had fucking 3 penalties. You wouldn't have been saying that if they'd been beaten, that's for sure. Yeah. But no, them memories have always... But I remember fans coming up to us and going, Mark, you're a a Man United fan. Mm-hmm. I went, no, I'm a Newcastle fan. No, you're a Man United fan. I went, are you stupid? If I'm a Man United fan, look, would I award 3 penalties against my team if I really supported them?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I suppose.
It's probably worth a debate for another podcast, but I do still think that the Man United-Liverpool rivalry is still the most intense.
Yeah. Without doubt.
In English football.
In without doubt, because it's had different, I refereed Chelsea, Arsenal, for example, at that era, and that was a tough game. But Man United, Liverpool, for whatever reason, and sometimes it settled down, and then you had the Suarez every situation, which sparked another session away. So the rivalry is always, it's always about trophies, but it's always something that's happened in the games as well, which has just sparked it. And I remember doing the game back. It was a League Cup game when Suarez came back to Old Trafford, and the handshakes and a lot of it, was horrible to see because two footballers that naturally hated each other, and you're having to referee them, of course.
Right, that's it for the latest episode of Whistleblowers. We'll be back on Tuesday for the next instalment. Until then, just a reminder about the socials. You can email whistleblowers@dailymail.com. That's whistleblowers@dailymail.com. Head to the social accounts, X, Blowers Pod, TikTok, Whistleblowers Podcast, Instagram, Whistleblowers Pod. And all that leaves for us to do is to get Mark to blow the full-time whistle.
And look what I've got this week. The old Premier League whistle.
Is that the one?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Did you like?
Blimey.
Sake.
Did you like that?
No.
See the other one.
I've got earphones in. Thank you very much.
If you want to watch more episodes of Whistleblowers, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll keep you up to date all the way through the summer with everything that's happening in the world of football.